Everyone, welcome back to Alan Wake 2. So we're going to try out the final draft. That's the New Game Plus version of the game with a brand new ending. So this will be a work in progress. I'll basically add to it as I come across scenes that are new in this version instead of recording the whole playthrough, because most of it is still going to be the same. So I'd rather not record 18 more hours of that. But we will record my reaction to scenes that are new. And I already caught a glimpse of the intro, so we're definitely going to start off with the intro itself. So here we go, the final draft. Gonna play on normal because I heard it's already harder, and the game is hard as hell as it is, so we're not gonna go into hard or nightmare. I don't know if there's any extra collectibles in there, but if there are, they're gonna stay there.
Back to the beginning, with the memory of the past loop already fading fast. But while it lingers, I know there's hope. We're not doomed to repeat our failures in an eternal loop. This is a spiral.
So right away, this is new. This is a brand new intro.
A fictional poet once said, "Beyond the shadow you settle for, there is a miracle illuminated. I will not settle for a shadow. I'll find the miracle through the night." It's not just victims and monsters. I see now there are heroes as well. We can find our way through the darkness. We will break through the surface. We will emerge into the light.
Yeah, you're no hero, Alan. You're a menace. But Saga's a hero, and so is Casey, but you, I'm not too sure. Alright, so we're back to the regular sequence with what's his name, Nightingale. So I think we can skip this. I put on the nudity filter for it so that he's not naked again like he was originally. But yeah, we're just gonna record the scenes that are new as we come across them throughout the game, because obviously I don't want to record all of them, so we already did the main playthrough. Like I said, I think most of this is the same, but there are some sequences here and there that are different, primarily the ending, and as you saw right there, the intro. So I'll comment on those as we come across them. I'll also be getting most of the collectibles in this because I want to try to platinum the game. So we're just going to go on from here and see what new things await us in this playthrough. So here's something new. We found this page after examining the threshold tree where Nightingale came from. This one is called Saga Anderson's Deja Vu. It's one of Alan Wake's pages, but this one, I don't think I picked it up on the last playthrough, so this might be one of the new ones that they added.
Saga bent down to inspect the body on the table. Somehow it felt familiar. The straps, the heart, the mutilated corpse laying on the rain-soaked wood. Like deja vu. She chased the source of the feeling. Found nothing. None of the victims from her past cases resembled this one. It didn't feel like anything from her past. More like something from a dream. From a life she could barely remember. Maybe one that wasn't even hers. Then the feeling passed. Like a shadow in the trees shifting with the wind. Saga blinked, shook the feeling from her head. She turned her focus back on the work. There was a lot to do. Casey and the deputy were watching her. She had a feeling this would be an exciting case.
So it is kind of like a loop, or like Alan says, a spiral. But yeah, so Saga's already picking up on the fact that she's been here before. So I wonder what other pages we're gonna find. I wonder what stuff Alan is gonna find, because his should be the more interesting side, because I can imagine sagas will proceed pretty much almost exactly as the one that did before, you know, as the first playthrough. But on Alan's side, I wonder what hints he's gonna find from his future self, telling him that he's done this already before. And I'm also obviously looking forward to see if we find any more evidence of Dr. Darling being in there, because I've seen a lot of mention of him and Thomas Zane together plotting something, so I'm curious to see what that is. But yeah, we already found one page that I think is unique to this playthrough. I don't think we had that one before.
I think something's been put inside Nightingale's body. Let's tell the deputies to get the body to the town morgue.
Okay.
So one thing I wanted to mention, I'm actually playing on quality mode this time. After playing a lot of Silent Hill 2 on quality mode, I have to admit I actually barely noticed the 30 frames per second. The game still feels smooth. What does she want? But yeah, I decided we were gonna play this one on quality mode, just to see. Casey's determined to get his coffee. But yeah, just to see what it was like, and there's actually a definite difference. You can notice a lot more of the textures, a lot more fine detail, but also, I think it might have been just me not being used to the 30 FPS, because once you start playing it for like 5 minutes or so, you actually get pretty used to it. So yeah, the game looks great. Maybe not quite as impressive as Silent Hill 2 does on quality mode, but I think they're almost neck and neck for sure. Like if on a scale rating out of 100, if Silent Hill 2 was a 98, I think this one might be like a 96 or 95. But it's yeah, it's looking pretty impressive so far on quality mode. No real performance hitches, no drop frames. So we're gonna see how well the game progresses as we go further into it. But yeah, so far I'm liking it. I think my first initial impression might have just been wrong. I just needed a little bit of time to adapt to it. So here's another page that seems slightly different. It mentions her feeling a familiar presence, which I don't think we got originally. So I guess that's another example of a deja vu, where she's picking up on the spiral that Alan's creating.
The fuse was in place. She found it among the junk in the forest. Saga stepped inside the witch's hut. Something rushed through her. A presence. Familiar. She couldn't quite place it. Something long forgotten. She tried to hold on to it, but it was already gone. Inside, a bright light. Saga felt safe. Like nothing could hurt her here. There were objects that stood out to Saga, as if the light had manifested them, pulled them from the darkness. A shift in reality, heavy with hidden meanings. A coffee thermos, a shoebox, a mop and a bucket, a poster on the wall, and in the cabinet, another manuscript page.
Yeah, I have to look at some of these pages on the other save file to see how they were originally. But yeah, I think I believe that one is slightly different, because I don't remember her mentioning that she was picking up on her former presence before. So like you said, she's forgotten everything that happened before, but she's also picking up on the fact that it has happened already. So I'll definitely have to check those pages to see if they're exactly the same, or if they are slightly different than they were before. Because it seems so far we found two that could have been changed by the final draft that Alan's creating. So we're seeing changes little by little. The main big change was the intro at the beginning. That was definitely new. That was completely new. But in terms of the pages we're finding, we're seeing some subtle changes here and there that indicate, yeah, it's basically the loop unfolding as Alan is writing it. And here's another one. This one definitely wasn't there before. The Dark Poem. This one is definitely casting a light on what Alan's doing right now. You can see it in the mention of the third eye. So this is definitely a new memo that was not here before in the original playthrough.
The writer of the first word, not the writer of the last. With the terror of the light and the shadow cast, the third eye now open to project the night. This is the moment to write. This is the ritual to lead you on. Your friends will meet him when you are gone.
So that sounds like Saga shooting him in the head with the bullet of light at the end of the first playthrough actually opened his basically third eye. So now he can kind of see what he couldn't see before. He didn't know it was a spiral. He thought it was a loop that just continued on the same over and over again. But now he realizes he can actually change it a little bit by bit. So I guess that's indicating that he now has a greater awareness than he did before. So that makes you wonder what else he's going to change throughout the story. I know Mr. Door gets a little bit more insight because I've heard about that. And that, like I said, I've also heard that Casper Darling may put in an additional appearance. So we're definitely getting some hints that Alan has become much more aware than he was originally. Even though the course of events are still the same, more or less there's a murder, Nightingale is involved, the cult of the tree is involved. The major events are the same, but there's little subtle variations here and there that he seems to be weaving into the story. And obviously anybody who's seen the last Marvel movie with Doctor Strange would definitely be familiar with that third eye concept on how it's supposed to grant greater awareness. But it was also in Everything Everywhere All at Once. So yeah, when we first played the game, we didn't really know what that bright light on Alan's forehead was. We didn't really know until the very end when we saw that it was actually a bullet. But now it seems like the bullet was never meant to kill him or anything like that. It was just meant to increase his awareness. So even though in that playthrough, even though it kind of got rid of the bad version of him, Mr. Scratch, which was him possessed by the dark presence, it seems like it's also giving him a much greater awareness of what he needs to do to finally write himself out of there. So that makes me really curious as to what the ending is going to be. Is it going to be still a bit bleak, or is it going to be much more positive than the previous ending? So I'm definitely excited to see where that leads us over the next few days. So I came across another interesting thing here, which we're going to see in a few moments. I restarted the game to show you guys, but one thing I noticed here, obviously we saw the book from Casper Darling before. I anticipated he'll make another appearance eventually, hopefully, just because of the nature of the narrative. But look at this thing over here. What do you see here? Super Strong Relax Black Pyramid brand cigarettes, which means that even in the dark place, the board actually seems to have some influence. Either Door left these himself or Darling left these himself, but this is Black Pyramid brand cigarettes. Only available at the Federal Bureau of Control, the FBC. So remember what all those theories have said about the board wanting worship, and how even using the Black Pyramid brand is a form of acknowledging them and worshipping them. Apparently that applies to the dark place as well, and possibly Mr. Door, since this is his dressing room. So I wonder what connection he has to them, or if it's just a little Easter egg. But this is Remedy though, so nothing in Remedy games is an Easter egg just for its own sake. There's always something lying underneath, some other motive. And the fact that you have here my interpretation of Many Worlds from Darling. You have Mr. Door's dressing room. He's called the Master of Many Worlds. He travels between dimensions. And you have the Black Pyramid brand here, which these guys sit between dimensions, the board. Makes you think they're all connected somehow.
I was a mess. I'd never heard of this talk show or Mr. Door before. None of it felt right. Was I losing my mind?
Now here's another thing that I don't know if I didn't notice it before or if it wasn't there in the original playthrough, but I definitely noticed it now. I thought it was the standard message from the writer's room at first, but then pay close attention to what he says in this video, because it is definitely enlightening.
Maybe time never worked the way we think it does. It loops around it, and yet it goes forward. A spiral. I thought I was finding remnants of the earlier loops, earlier drafts of my writing. The murder sites, that I had left clues, mementos for myself to guide me on, but maybe that's only part of it. If telling this not a straight line, then there are loops beyond these loops. Vast complex superstructures beyond what's happening to me now, ahead of me. And I'm there as well, a version of me, something I have become, some elevated, enlightened virgin, an archon, a demiurge, a demon of some sort playing a secret game, building something, his past self upon to get him there, a deus ex machina pushing me there. I hate the idea of crazy, intrusive thought. And yet, no crazier than anything else here.
Which version of myself was I? Where was I in this grand loop?
Fruit Loops? But no, seriously, that's a really cool detail. He's starting to pick up on the fact that this is a past version of him, and time has somehow been reset. But what he mentioned about what he's become, it sounds like he's ascending to some sort of enlightened state, but he's becoming more than human. Which again brings to mind Casper Darling and how he ascended to some type of resonance-based life form, or whatever Polaris was, or Hedron from Control. So that does make you wonder, what is Alan going to turn into at the end of all this, under Alice's guidance, and the guidance of something called the Bright Presence. I've been watching some videos from Gaming University, that channel on YouTube that does a deep dive into Alan Wake and Control and Remedy folklore, and it is really creepy to read about Thomas Zane and how the likelihood is that Thomas Zane has been long gone from the universe in the Remedy setting, that what we've been interacting with all along is basically Alan's creation as his version of Thomas Zane that took on a life of its own. Like, the real Thomas Zane is actually long gone, and his appearance has been taken over at times by something called the Bright Presence, which might be the opposite force in the dark place opposing the Dark Presence. And then the other one, the filmmaker, might actually be just the creation of Alan Wakes that took on a life of his own. So that's actually really creepy to think about, the fact that we have never actually seen this man for how as important as he is on the whole Remedy setting, like the whole Remedy universe. As important as this guy is, we have never actually seen him, and we probably never will. He's moved beyond the proper universe now, and what's wearing his face, the Thomas Zane that we've seen Alan interact with, is actually one of two things. One of them is the Bright Presence masquerading as Thomas Zane. That would be the one with James McCaffrey's voice at the beginning of Alan Wake, and then in the Alan Wake DLCs. And then the second one will be the filmmaker, who might actually be like similar to Mr. Scratch, in that he's like a creation of Alan's what Alan thought Zane might have been like. That's why he also made the change from from poet to filmmaker. And then the poet Thomas Zane becomes a character in his film. So there's some very weird stuff going on here with Thomas Zane, but it's creepy to know that the Thomas Zane that was the original one, the one on the island, in Bright Falls, who went there with his wife or partner, whatever, Barbara Jagger, like that Thomas Zane is long dead at this point. So I was wondering what was up with him. What was the whole mystery of him? Like, what exactly was he? Was he a poet? Was he a filmmaker? Was he Alan's previous incarnation? And the answer is none of those, and all of those at the same time. And I think that if that theory is true, then Alan himself might be a partial creation of the original Thomas Zane and the Bright Presence. Meaning he's still human, like he's not a fully artificial man, like I called Alex Casey before I knew what he was. It's not that, but I mean, like, they might have influenced the way in which Alan's life proceeded, because they needed someone to stop the Dark Presence eventually. So Alan's whole journey might actually be a creation of them, and Alice and him might actually be like, not reincarnations, but almost like the second versions of Thomas Zane and Barbara Jagger, in the modern world, you know, in the 2010s instead of back in the 1970s. So there's some really weird lore in there. And I don't know if I'm explaining it properly or not, but if you watch those videos, Gaming University, not only are they very well researched, they pretty much go over every aspect of the Remedy universe with a fine-tooth comb, but they also make a lot of sense, and they're also really creepy at times, especially the control ones. Once you really get into like the lore behind the board, and what seems to be like a helpful, if you know, a helpful, slightly benevolent, if weird, alien helpers to Jessie, helping her get her footing and become the director of the FPC. What seemed to be like overall nice, what would you even call them? Benefactors at first are actually something really dark and something really nasty in the Remedy universe. So if you watch those videos about the board and control, not only will you be fascinated, but you'll be very creeped out. And then after you finish watching those, watch the ones for Alan Wake and Thomas Zane, and then you'll definitely be creeped out at the implications of what Thomas Zane actually is. So yeah, I just thought I'd share this and add it to the growing video compilation for the final draft, because I came across this video and I could have waited until I reached the writer's room and replayed the video, but I wanted you to also see Alan's comments on it, because it's very important. Alan is becoming aware that his future self might have grown into something far greater than he ever was. I also like the way he says demon, because first he says demiurge, and if you know what the demiurge is, it's basically almost like the opposite of God. It's like a god of a physical world in the Gnostic beliefs. If you've ever heard of those, they have some influence on the Silent Hill universe as well. But it's also interesting that he says demon, because we are assuming that in order for him to get out of the dark place, he has to ascend, like Alice says, into a greater form, you know, something more good and benevolent. But what if it's the reverse? What if he's actually growing into something more destructive and dangerous than anything we've seen so far in the 2 Alan Wake games? Especially with the board being there, you can see their influence in the Black Pyramid cigarettes. What if he's actually growing into something like them? You know, he's not ascending to something righteous and heroic and, you know, being the champion of light, as he says in the song. What if he's actually becoming something darker like the board and what they are, whatever the hell they are? Because remember, the song they sing for him in the musical chapter is called Herald of Darkness. So Alan Wake is the Herald of Darkness. He is bringing the darkness with him out into the real world. So what if his ultimate ascent isn't actually something heroic or positive? What if he is just becoming, you know, like the board, you know, just another parasite feeding off this place? There's nothing so far we've seen that says his ascent from the dark place has to be good. You know, Alice assumes that, but he's her husband, so of course she's going to assume that in order for him to get out, his path is going to be something heroic and positive. But what if it's not? What if Alan is actually turning into something that we're going to have to put down eventually, as Jesse or Saga or even Mr. Door or Alex Casey? Like, what if he ultimately ends up becoming something that we have to put down for the greater good? That's a very intriguing possibility, especially with what Dylan shows us in the Alan Wake 2 DLC, the lake house, and what we saw was going to happen to the world eventually is not good. So what if Alan is a part of that too? What if Mr. Door is actually the heroic figure in here, not Alan Wake? But I'm going to continue on, and if I come across any other interesting stuff, I'll add it to the video. So that was just a very fascinating piece of lore that I just discovered, and I wanted to share it with you guys. So back to the drawing board.
He is beset by visions leaking in from realities beyond his own. He uses those visions as inspiration for his stories, in hopes of giving them power to make them come true. Us, hidden few, know that ultimately he will succeed. But before that, many of his stories collapse back into the stuff that dreams are made of, to remain as they began, works of fiction. And yet, maybe there is a gleam of truth to be unearthed from these tales. Rare glimpse into the unseen realities beyond our own, offering us intriguing avenues of contemplation as they transpire in Night Springs.
And there's the promo for Night Springs. I don't remember seeing this the first time I watched this sequence, the first time I played it, so I assume this is something added in after the DLC. So you can see there, he's actually explaining what Night Springs is. Oh, and look, there's the Black Pyramid again. The board is getting their influence around. I wonder if he's an agent of theirs or not, or if he's even beyond them. But yeah, the thing about the Night Springs, he actually explained it right there. A lot of people are wondering what they are, and I was wondering where this notion that they were attempted escapes by Alan had come from, because I hadn't yet played this part. But yeah, there it is right there. He was attempting to escape the dark place using those stories, and obviously from a technical perspective, the one involving the ray trace, meaning like the simulation of Rose, is the weakest one, because like a lot of people have pointed out, it makes no sense. And the way Alan tried to write himself out there was one, he eliminated his wife, which goes against the whole purpose of what Alan dove in there in the first place, to rescue Alice. Two, he kind of attempted to use a version of Rose to kind of, I don't even know what the hell he was trying to do. I'm guessing maybe if he was hoping if it succeeded, he would have emerged in Rose's house, maybe. I wonder what he thought that was going to happen there. But Gaming University had a video on that too, and apparently he speculated that Alan might have known all along that his attempts weren't going to work, but he had to try them anyway because he was trying to actually weaken Mr. Scratch. Because in particular in the Waitress one, number one fan, he basically turned Scratch from like this ultra malevolent force into like this petty, whiny, playboy type guy who's just jealous of his more successful brother, the writer, which is Alan himself. So he might have been trying to weaken Scratch by taking him from this potentially very destructive, monstrous force into like this petty, puny, whiny type guy that he can easily overcome with bullets. Because one thing about the Dark Place is whatever you write here, if you believe in it wholeheartedly, it comes true. It becomes reality. And if you use the clicker at the appropriate time, you can turn it into hard, concrete reality. So he might have been trying to get Scratch to a point where Scratch is literally harmless or very easy to take down. If he can weaken him with each successive story, Scratch at one point might stop being such a large menace, and then he would be much more easy for Alan or even Saga to tackle. What he didn't know, of course, was that Scratch is himself with the Dark Prisons, and if he's not a separate man like he was in Alan Wake's American Nightmare, he actually is Alan Wake himself. So that was never going to work, because the problem is he can't weaken Scratch because he becomes Scratch every time the Dark Presence goes into him. So he's basically trying to weaken himself, and given his powers that we know he has, both thanks to Control and this game, and given the fact that he's manipulated events so thoroughly here, that was never going to work. He can't defeat Scratch like that because he is Scratch. Scratch is not a separate entity. He's not a separate man. He actually is himself, just possessed by the Dark Presence. So that was never going to work, but that might have been his intention, to actually weaken it. And it makes sense because, remember, right now he doesn't know Scratch is himself. So from his perspective, Scratch seems like this ultra powerful force. The more he goes along in the game and the story, the more intimidating he becomes. So in past loops, his attempts to weaken it might have been just that, writing these stories to see how much he can chip away at Scratch's invulnerability, at how much he can chip away at the powerful aura that he has around him, by basically making him into a joke in Rose's segment. And then the coffee one with Jesse was just well, the Jesse stand-in called the sibling, that was just bad writing because as um as someone else pointed out, we have no hint whatsoever that Alan is involved in that story at all until we get to the end. He's effectively replaced Jesse's brother Dylan with himself, which one makes no fucking sense, and two, you can't do that because Dylan himself actually plays a crucial role in this universe. So you can't just wipe out one other powerful para-utilitarian just to replace him with yourself. It's not going to work because Dylan is too central to the Hiss, to the board, to the FBC, etc. He's a main character of his own story, so like you can't just wipe him out and replace him with another, which I guess was what that story was trying to do. Like maybe he thought he would be doing Jesse a favor if he wiped out Dylan and he became her brother and just awoke in the FBC in that container. I mean, that certainly would have solved one problem, you know, of what to do with Dylan after he wakes up. The problem is then the board would have been pissed and the FBC would have been pissed, because then whatever role Dylan has to accomplish in his story, he's not going to be able to, because Alan has effectively erased him from the universe. So that was never going to work. Just placing himself in the guise of Jesse's brother, that was never going to succeed. And then, like I said, the third one, Time Breaker, seems like Alan trying to dive deep into the background of Mr. Door, which I didn't know it, but apparently his backstory in that DLC, which I was speculating was just Alan writing a bunch of bullshit, was actually based on Martin Hatch's backstory from Quantum Break. So I'm wondering if it might not be all bullshit. Rather, Alan was perceiving the backstory of one of Mr. Door's alternates, his variants, and so maybe that might be a little similar to what Mr. Door's backstory itself is. So I thought it was all just BS that Alan was writing, trying to figure out what Door is or what he's planning to do. But it might actually be that he picked up on some of the actual facts, because remember, he is a bit psychic himself. He is a para-utilitarian. It's not just the dark place giving him power. He had that already before he stepped in here. So I was actually wrong about that. He might have actually picked up on some concrete facts about what Mr. Door is. It's just that he still doesn't have enough information to put all the pieces together. But the story does end with Tim Breaker, or rather Sean Ashmore, Tim Breaker's alternate, actually reaching Alan in the dark place, the writer's room. So I'm guessing the goal there, besides just finding out about Mr. Door and then seeing if maybe, I don't know, if maybe Door or even Tim Breaker could challenge Mr. Scratch. I'm guessing the goal there was also to have Tim Breaker reach such a level of power that when he finally comes into the writer's room, he's able to free Alan from the dark place. Because remember, part of Ashmore, I'm just gonna call him Ashmore since it's the actor. Part of Ashmore's journey in that DLC is to basically wage war against Mr. Door and then follow a path eventually where he can reach a level of enlightenment and power that he can actually challenge Door and win. So I'm guessing Alan figured, well, if he can beat Mr. Door and outmaneuver him and maybe even kill him, then maybe he can get me out of here and he can just set me free. But of course the problem is, again, that's dependent on someone else to rescue Alan. He's not rescuing himself, which I guess the dark presence in the dark place kind of shakes his finger at him. You know, it's a big no. Someone else can't get you out of there by themselves. You have to get yourself out of here. So I'm guessing that's why that one didn't work. Because that was also what he was trying to with Jessie too, trying to manipulate her into a position where he could build her up to be so powerful that I guess eventually she could just walk in there and get him out of there. But the problem is that was never going to happen, because one, Jessie doesn't even know who he is until that DLC, AWE, and two, Jessie takes orders from the board, which, based on what we've seen so far on Mr. Scratch, and the fact that we have this damn Black Pyramid cigarette box right here, makes me think that the board is fully aware of what he is and where he is, and they just don't care. So if Jesse actually tried to mount like a full, I don't know, serious effort to get him out of here, I'm pretty sure the board would intervene and remind her that no, that's not the duties of the director of the FBC. The duties of the director of the FBC is to serve the FBC, and by extension to serve them, because we know from Dr. Ash in that game that the board is actually up to no good. They're not trustworthy, and they might actually be villains themselves. So they don't want Jesse distracting the FBC from anything other than their current de facto mission, which is to basically let the board feed off the oldest house, and by extension Earth, as much as possible for as long as possible. That's their real game plan there. So anything that detracts from that, and the side business of containing altered objects and OOPs, objects of power, is going to be a big no-no. So I imagine if Jesse actually does try to mount some large expedition to rescue Alan from this place, they're going to step in and they're going to sabotage the whole thing, because they do not want her wasting time on something like that. They want her focused squarely on the FBC where they can control her. So yeah, that effort was doomed too, because the way Ashmore grows in power, Tim Breaker's vary, and the way he grows in power in the Time Breaker DLC is that he hooks up with that company called the Ripple Corporation, which is basically a thinly veiled FBC. It's basically the FBC under a corporate banner. And so, in order to challenge Mr. Door, he has to grow their resources and their power. So, basically, Alan is trying to build up Ashmore to a certain level of power the same way he built up Jesse, and that's not going to work, because again, if the Ripple Corporation's main duty is taking down Mr. Door, what do they care about Alan Wake? And then two, like I said, if they're built in such a way that they're trying to influence real life events, aka the FBC and the board, then obviously the board is going to detect that. Since they're in the astral plane, they're beyond probably even Alan in the dark place, so they're going to know instantly and they're going to counter that. So yeah, like Door just said in the TV, all three efforts, all distinctly different stories, meant to rescue Alan and get him out of here, and all three of them doomed to fail. Because again, mitigating factors just make the ending impossible. There's no way he can get out of there using those stories. But like they also said just now, each of them has a kernel of truth to them. It's important to know he doesn't invent stuff outright. That's not his game. That's not the way it works. He can't just create an actual human being out of nothing. He uses what's already there. So the waitress, the sibling, the concept of Jesse's brother, the guiding star, Sean Ashmore, Tim Breaker, the Ripple Corporation, the alternative Jesse that we see in there, Jespet, everything, even that version of Door himself, pretty much everything is based on something that exists in the world. So he doesn't really create anything from scratch. He writes things that have some truth to them. That's something that a lot of people don't understand, and even I didn't understand it at first. I thought, did he actually create the hiss in Control? That's what a lot of people thought. Alan Wake, that's what they thought for the longest time. Alan Wake wrote Control, every single event that happens in that game, and actually the correct answer is no, he didn't. He took stuff that already existed and then twisted it into a certain path to follow, so that eventually Jesse would grow ultra powerful, beyond Trench, beyond Darling, etc., beyond Northmore, and then I guess his end game was she would be able to come here and just rescue him outright. And obviously that's not going to happen right now, because aside from all the other reasons I just listed, Jesse is also trapped in the oldest house because of the hiss. They can't open the building because they can't let the hiss out. And since they can't let the hiss out, they can't open the building to go outside the oldest house. They can't actually mount any type of rescue expedition in Bright Falls, which I'm guessing is part of why that attempt failed, because he wrote himself into a corner there. Yes, he did make the director of the FPC ultra powerful, Jesse. He did do what he wanted to. He presented them with a threat, the Hiss, which he did not create them himself. The Hiss existed. He just made them way worse than they were originally. But he amped up their power in the hopes that it would amp up Jesse's power, and it worked. But the problem is the Hiss grew so powerful and so widespread that they're now still in the oldest house. And because they're still in the oldest house, they can't open up the building, which means Jesse and the other FBC agents who could actually find a way to get him out of here can't actually go to Bright Falls. So he wrote himself into a definite corner there. He got the ultra powerful, super capable director that he wanted. He got the hero that he wanted. Like he said in the AWE DLC, Wake needed a hero. I believe those were his exact same words. Wake needed a hero. And he created that hero by manipulating Jesse's life. But the problem is his writing also locked her into a building that she can't leave. And since she can't leave, she can't actually do anything to help him out. The closest she got was when she went to the Overview, not the Overview. I'm thinking of the Overlook Hotel. No, she went to the Ocean View Motel. And that door cracked open for one specific moment where she could see him and she could see the fake Thomas Zane, and then it slammed shut, and the motel did not allow her to open it again. So yeah, good going, Alan. You created the ultra powerful hero that you wanted, but you also made it impossible for her to rescue you. So great going, buddy. That's some fine AAA writing accomplishment right there. He wrote himself completely into a corner, and I'm guessing that's why he abandoned that attempt, because he suddenly realized, wait a minute, it does not work. I completely fucked myself here, because now Jesse can't leave the oldest house. I remember the oldest house has been here before human civilization, so it's greater than Alan Wake. Nothing he can do can influence it unless it wants him to. So if the oldest house says you're not leaving here until all the hills are cleared, you are not leaving here until all the hills are cleared. So yeah, that put a kibosh on that escape attempt. So we've got 4 so far. We've got Control. We've got Number One Fan. We've got what's the second one called? The one with Jesse. I think it's called North Star. Is that what it's called? North Star? And then we have Timebreaker. That's 4. And we have the attempts that he also mentions here. So there might be 5 or 6 that we don't even know about. And then Gaming University speculates that Alan Wake's American Nightmare might actually be one of the earliest ones. So that might be number 7. So far we might have at least 7, maybe even 8 or 9 escape attempts so far that he's made over the years. So he is definitely accumulating a number of escape attempts. But the intriguing thing said here, and I'm gonna cut this short because so far this segment is 20 minutes long, but I'm gonna cut it short. But the really intriguing thing Dor just said that just now is that we know he'll escape. So Dor says we know he will succeed, the chosen few. So that might be Alice himself, the old gods of Asgard, because remember they went in there to rescue Saga and then they never went out, they never left. So I assume they're still in there. So we got 4 individuals so far, and then maybe the Dark Presence itself, as much as it might not want to admit it, maybe it knows that Alan will escape eventually. So that's 5. And then we have the Bright Presence masquerading as Thomas Zane, which is 6. So we have at least 6 individuals or entities that know he will escape eventually, which obviously hints toward a possible trilogy for Alan Wake eventually, unless it's settled in Control too, because that might always be a thing too. The Dark Presence might escape into the world and Jesse has to deal with it. So either way, it's hinting towards a resolution to his story. But the interesting thing is, like I said, we don't know what he's going to turn into. Yes, he will escape eventually, but is his escape going to be positive? Is he going to become a bright, helpful force like Ati, or Jessie herself? Or is it going to become a dangerous force? Is it going to be negative? Is it going to be Mr. Scratch permanently? Or is he going to become something like Chester Bless of the Control files, who He heads the Blessed organization, which is basically the terrorist organization that opposes the FBC. And it seems like he's rumored to be a powerful para-utilitarian himself. So is that what he's going to become? You know, a danger to everyone around him? Or is he going to become like the board, where he's just this manipulator that's just leeching off of everything, and he's a danger to them himself? Like, is he going to become like the board in control, where it's pretty obvious that at some point Jesse's going to have to confront them and either force them to stop some of what they're doing or just try to kill them outright, because they're, based on what Dr. Ash says, they're a definite danger, not just to the oldest house, but probably the Earth as well. So which path is Alan going to take? Is he going to take the path of light, like Ahti and Jesse and maybe even Dr. Darling did? Or is he going to take the path of darkness and end up like a permanent Mr. Scratch, or Chester Bless, or even, like I said, the board from Control, which would be terrifying. Can you imagine Mr. Scratch, you know, Alan in that form, having as much power as the board has, where you can control all those possessed and haunted objects of all the different powers that they have? That would be an absolute nightmare for the FBC to deal with if he gained that much power. So yeah, if he's gonna ascend from this place, you have to hope that the result is that either A, he returns to his old life as a writer and never messes with this stuff again, or B, he just does like the old Thomas Zane did, and he just moves on from the world, period. He dies essentially, but he dies in a way that he ascends probably to whatever positive afterlife awaits in the Remedy universe, as Thomas Zane did. But there's definite ways, there's at least 3 ways in which he can become just a nightmare to the world at large by ascending out of this place. If he becomes like Mr. Scratch permanently, or if he turns into another Chester Bless, which we haven't even seen, and we already know how dangerous he is from the Control files, or if he becomes like the board that the FBC currently serves at, that would be a nightmare for the entire Earth. So there are definitely at least 3 possible very dark endings to Alan Wake's story. We'll just have to see which one of them he takes. But that's enough rambling for now. I just wanted to share again this another interesting video that I just discovered. I get the feeling this is probably going to be a 2 or 3 part video series. I thought we might only do 1 video, but so far I already got like an hour's worth of material, and we're early on in the game, so I assume there's going to be a lot more changes to come. So we are definitely in it for the long haul.
Hello?
Alan Wake,
Yes.
do you know who I am?
No? Who is this?
We'll get to that later. There are spies all over. Shadows.
A sense of deja vu washed over me. Had I had this conversation before?
Alan, listen to me carefully. Caldera Street Station, the subway. You need to go there. I'll call you again later. Make sure to pick up.
Do I know you? I know you from somewhere.
You've just forgotten again. We're in it together. Don't worry. I got it now. We've been working. Great.
I'm losing you. Hello? Hello? The man had said Caldera Street Station. I had to go there.
So yeah, there Alan is showing more recognition of this being another phase in the loop. Basically, he can already tell that he's had that same exact conversation before. And also the phone caller said, "You've just forgotten again. I don't remember if that part was in the original conversation or not, but it might indicate that he also knows that this is a loop that's repeating itself, and they've had this conversation before.
An outside time and space.
Let's see if this one gives us something new.
A nightmare dimension, an ocean of darkness. Remember, its dark energy can make art come true, make dreams and nightmares come true. Yes, I can use this. I need to use this. Hungry, monstrous things out there wanting to stop me, to devour me, become me. Oh no.
Alright, we got one for the spiral and one for writing. We already saw most of the spiral one, but should we check it out again? Let's check out the writing one. See what that yields.
I'm a writer. I write. Writing is the key. Art is the key to find my way out of the dark place. I can't forget this. Don't you fucking forget this. I'm in the dark place. I'm outside time and space. Outside reality. But this is real. A nightmare dimension. An ocean of darkness. Remember, its dark energy can make art come true. Make dreams and nightmares come true. Yes, I can use this. I need to use this. Hungry, monstrous things out there wanting to stop me, to devour me, become me. Oh no. Time is broken here. Maybe time never worked the way we think it does. It loops around. And yet it goes forward. A spiral. I thought I was finding remnants of the earlier loops, earlier drafts of my writing. The murder sites. That I had left clues, mementos for myself to guide me on, but maybe that's only part of it. If time is not a straight line, then there are loops beyond these loops. Vast complex superstructures beyond what's happening to me now, ahead of me. And I'm there as well, a version of me, something I have become, some elevated, enlightened virgin, an archon, a demiurge, a demon of some sort, playing a secret game, building something, his past self a pawn to get him there, a deus ex machina pushing me there. I hate the idea, a crazy, intrusive thought. And yet, no crazier than anything else here.
Okay, so that one didn't really tell us any new info. We already knew that already going into it. The first one, I mean. It didn't really tell us anything new, but it did confirm that the phone call we had just now did confirm that he's growing more aware of the loop that's going on. I wonder how much more changes they're going to throw at us over the course of the game. Like, I wonder if Saga's going to experience something slightly different. And I'm still wondering where Casper Darling is. I'm almost pretty sure we see him at some point again. I just don't know where. But it should be interesting to see just how much they changed from the original version. Especially when dealing with Scratch. I imagine some of those cutscenes may undergo a pretty big, significant change. Based on what I've seen so far. So this is pretty interesting. We actually found an episode of Night Springs now earlier that you can access. I'm guessing this is the DLC with the waitress. That's probably the first one. Let's see what it says. Oh, so it's gonna take you directly to the DLC if we access it. Nah, I think I'll hold off on that. The only DLC I'm gonna do right away is probably the Lake House one, because I already did all 4 of them. But I mean, in terms of finishing up the trophies, I'll do the separate ones. I'll do the first 3 on my own time. I think the only one I'll do directly while we're playing the actual story is probably the Lake House, since it fits at that time. But that's pretty neat that you can actually access it from the TV right here. You don't actually have to go back outside into the menu and load the first DLC. You can access it right from the middle of the story, basically. That's a pretty neat detail. Alright, so it's been a long time since I recorded anything for this particular game. But I want to pick up Alan Wake again since I've been watching a lot of videos on the lore on the Remedyverse. Now this isn't related specifically to the final draft itself, but I noticed this right here, which I think I might have missed. I don't know if I mentioned it or not during the original playthrough, but if you look here, look at what it says here. Night Springs doesn't exist. It's a fictional town from the TV show I used to work on. It was Anyplace USA, a place we used as a backdrop for whatever strange story we had that week. One of the stories I wrote for the show involved a man, quotation marks, the champion of light, fighting his evil double, quotation marks, the herald of darkness. Now this is actually very significant, because remember what I said about not being sure whether Alan Wake's American Nightmare was canon or not to the scenario. And I think it's still pretty unclear from an official stance from Remedy, but I think this actually hints that it was canon. It did happen. It's just that it was one of the earlier attempts he made to escape, and it did not work out. The clue being that I haven't played American Nightmare, but I saw that in the intro to it. It's basically Barry Wheeler in a motel, dreaming while he falls asleep to Night Springs, and then just as he goes to, just as he goes fully unconscious, you see on the TV that the Night Springs episode that's playing is one involving Alan Wake himself hunting down Mr. Scratch. And I guess Barry completely misses that portion of what's happening, but it is an actual attempt by Alan to escape. So yeah, I think this probably confirms it right here, because that's where you got the whole idea for the Champion of Light and the Herald of Darkness. That's literally what they're called in that particular game, Alan Wake's American Nightmare. So yeah, I think I might have missed it before, but I think this is actually a huge clue that yes, that game is canon to an extent. It did happen. It did occur in the cycle. It's just that it's an earlier attempt in the loop for Alan to escape, and one that obviously does not work. I know he reunites with Alice, I think, at the end of that, but that was obviously just some kind of hallucination or deception by the Dark Place or whatever, but it didn't happen. It was just an earlier attempt that he made to escape, and it did not work out as planned. But then that does raise the question, and this is something I saw people asking on Gaming University's video, because he covers a lot of Alan Wake / Remedy stuff. What happened to that Mr. Scratch? Because if Scratch is now Alan whenever he's possessed by the Dark Presence, that's when he turns into Scratch, almost like how Jekyll turns into Hyde whenever he takes that potion. Then what exactly happened to the earlier Mr. Scratch? Did Alan defeat him completely, or did he just shift forms? And now he's changed, and I wonder, maybe part of the personality that he gained as Scratch actually got absorbed into the Dark Presence. That's why whenever Alan gets possessed by it, he turns very malicious. Because that doesn't seem like something that some godlike entity would do. Like, I know the Hiss is malicious in control, but the Dark Presence seems to want to escape from the Dark Place and start influencing the outside world, and it needs artists to do that. So it seems counterproductive to just morph into like this completely psychopathic entity and just go and torment Alice Wake just for the hell of it. Because Alice is another creative person in the Remedyverse, that it could actually use her to benefit its purpose. So that leads me to believe that maybe just a tiny bit part of the original Mr. Scratch's personality got what would you say? It got transferred or transplanted into the Dark Presence. So now it has a bit more sadistic. I was gonna say seditious, a bit more sadistic side to it than it originally did. Because again, now that I think about it, why would Mr. Scratch torment Alan's wife all this time, non-stop for 10 years? Like, it makes no sense, because we know the Dark Presence wants to escape. We know it needs artists to influence their outside world, to influence reality. So why would it torment someone who could actually help it significantly, basically to death? It makes no sense. Unless those thoughts and ideas and hatred that Mr. Scratch had before got absorbed back into the dark presence, and so now it's not what it originally was. Like, it was always evil to an extent, but it wasn't cruel and, significantly sadistic the way it is now. I think that all that came from Alan's evil double. Because as I understand it, the evil double, you can even see him here return Scratch. And of course you see the shadow, which I joked was Bigfoot, but that shadow obviously stands in for Mr. Scratch. So, according to what Gaming University said, because he played Alan Wake's American Nightmare, Mr. Scratch basically represents all the dark thoughts and ideas people came to have about Alan after he disappeared. That they thought he was some kind of serial killer, and that's what he basically morphed into. So that is Mr. Scratch. Mr. Scratch is basically a creation of the general public that made its way into the dark place and took on that form. Alan as a serial killer, this weird, dark, mysterious presence that they're all scared of. They're all afraid of him. And that was the whole reason why Alice started her own documentary in the first place, to set those rumors to rest and show people the real Alan, the man she knew and loved. That was why she did it in the first place. So it makes no sense from that standpoint for Scratch to be constantly tormenting her back and forth over and over every night for 10 years straight. That makes no sense, because the dark presence could actually be using her to fulfill its goals. She's a useful tool. So I have to believe that part of the real Mr. Scratch's personality got absorbed back into the dark presence, and so now it's quite a bit more sadistic and cruel than it was before. That's just my theory on it. I haven't played American Nightmare myself. I don't think I'll ever get the opportunity, because the Xbox Live store is basically shut down on the 360, and that's the only Xbox console I have. So I will likely never play that particular game. I guess I could always watch a walkthrough on it to see, maybe help me out, help me understand what's going on further. But I'll never play it myself. But that seems to be my conclusion based on what I'm seeing so far. That basically a part of original Scratch's personality got absorbed into the dark presence. It made it more sadistic and crueler. Is that a word? Crueler? It made it more cruel and vicious. And then whenever Alan gets taken over by the dark presence and he turns into Scratch, he retains that previous cruelty and hatred that his old evil self had, his old double. So he takes on that personality, and it basically takes on a life of its own. So Scratch isn't really just Alan possessed by the dark presence, like Saga believes, like she said, and like how Casey speculated. Scratch is actually Alan plus the dark presence, plus what's left of the original Mr. Scratch from American Nightmare. The remnants of it are basically all combined into one, and that's how you get the Scratch that appears in this game. He's basically a combination of all three. He's not just one or the other. It's just like how Alan and Thomas Zane aren't quite the same guy. They're aspects of each other, but they're not quite the same guy. There's vital differences between them all. They just reflect pieces of one another, and that's the same thing. I think Scratch in this game is built from all three. It's built from Alan's darkest thoughts. That's one, Alan himself. Then you have the dark presence, which was already existing in this world. That's two, and that's what gives him his power. That's what actually allows him to influence reality and actually, fight back against people trying to destroy it. That's where the power comes from. That's two. And then you have number three, which is the tiny scraps left on the original Mr. Scratch after Alan defeated him. All that blends together, and that's how you get Mr. Scratch in this game. It's a combination of all three factors working together. It's not just one or the other. So let's move along and keep exploring and see what else we find.
I'm often someone else. A different person with a different name, living a different life in a different world. It's alternate realities, maybe. But certain things don't change. Like door. I 'Cause 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 '
So that's one aspect that I'm becoming clearer on the more I learn about the Remedyverse. I did not know that Tim Breakers, his presence here basically is basically a reference to the conflict going on between different versions of him and Mr. Door over in Quantum Break. Like, I knew Door was based off the time traveler from Quantum Break there. And then obviously he is the same one. Just like how Alex Casey is basically another version of Max Payne. Mr. Door is basically another version of Mr. Hatch from over there, Martin Hatch. But I didn't know that Iceman here, Shawn Ashmore, is basically his almost like his reluctant apprentice in a way. I believe Gaming University calls him the unwilling, I think the unwilling devotee or something like that. Unwilling student. I wonder what term they use specifically for that. Let me look it up real quick. It'll only take a couple seconds. Oh yeah, I remember now. It's unwilling disciple, because that Mr. Door, Mr. Hatch wanted that version of Tim Breaker to join him over there, become like him, a shifter, shifting between different timelines, I guess, and different points in times, different realities. And I guess that Mr. Door here might actually want the same thing for this guy. He might want to turn him into he might want to turn him into like an unwilling disciple or apprentice to carry out his plans. That would explain why his dreams are so vivid, because they're not just dreams. He's actually seeing different realities of him and Mr. Door, of all their other alternate selves across the multiverse. So that definitely explains why. Because I was I was watching a really interesting video from Gaming University about inspiration and where it comes from. And he was theorizing that a lot of inspiration for writers in this universe comes through the dark place. Like, you're not really inventing stuff. You're just picking up on stuff that's already happened or will happen in the future, or is happening in the past, and then you're filtering to the dark place, and that becomes your inspiration for writing books and creating movies and writing songs and making video games and stuff like that. It all comes through the dark place that people can connect with it through their dreams. But in the case of Ashmore here, he's actually connecting, maybe not even really to the dark place. He's more like becoming aware of all his different other selves and all those other alternate realities, all the different opens. Look at that, door is open. Zane, cult classic in theaters. Dark days ahead. See, so Door stopped him from giving the pages to Saga too early because it wasn't the right time. He needed her to interfere later, not so soon. Is Door the gatekeeper or trying to get somewhere, everywhere? And the thing about Mr. Door, which it takes you a while to process it, but basically Door is pretty much in all universes at all times, is what I'm understanding from him. Because Martin Hatch, whatever happened to him in that cave in Quantum Break, I think it said he ran into a natural, they used the word chronon, but he basically ran into like a natural time disturbance in the cave, and he was forever changed by it. He went insane, and then he tried to stabilize himself, and sometimes he succeeds and sometimes he doesn't, but basically he's aware of all possibilities, all versions of himself across all possible timelines. Like every different action he could take, he's aware of it, and that's enough to drive him insane. So Mr. Door, which, like I said, might actually be another version of Mr. Hatch, if not Mr. Hatch himself. Mr. Door is basically a gatekeeper to every reality in existence. So he's everywhere and nowhere. You know, he's aware of every possible universe, and yet he exists, I guess, solidly in none of them. You know, he's not trapped. He can come and go from the dark place as he pleases, but it's difficult to describe. But yes, the same way Martin Hatch existed in pretty much every time period across every reality, every timeline. door basically exists in every dimension at once. So like if he could, he probably could go over to the dimension where the hiss came from. The other dimensions in the slides that Jessie burned in Control as a child when she was with her brother in the town of Ordinary. They burned the other remaining slides. He could probably go to those dimensions easily. He can go to other just regular alternate realities, as we saw in the Time Breaker DLC. You know, he can travel to one reality where Jesse's dead. He can travel to another one where Jesse has Polaris but doesn't have anything else. She has no superpowers. She can travel to one where Dylan might... I mean, he can travel to one where Dylan might be the director and not Jesse. He can travel to one where there might be no Ati period to keep the peace and everything's just messed up and destroyed because there's no caretaker for the oldest house or the earth itself. So he can pretty much go everywhere at every point in time. What we don't know is what his real agenda is. What is his goal? Like, is it like Martin Hash just to stabilize himself in one timeline, or is it to get someone else to maybe increase his power? Or maybe he needs someone else to stabilize him. That would be where Saga with her special powers might come in. Maybe he needs her and potentially his granddaughter also to stabilize himself from whatever's happened to him. It actually reminds you of this really intriguing Sliders character that appeared in the 5th and final season, Oberon Geiger, where because of an experiment that he conducted, he was basically unstuck from reality. That's the word he used, unstuck. And he had to be in the special containment center, which was this really small chamber in a laboratory in California, or else he would basically not disintegrate, but he would be spread all across the multiverse. So like all the various pieces of him would basically be scattered across like a million different universes, all across the multiverse. So he would be in every parallel reality, and yet he would be in none of them at the same time because he couldn't stabilize himself long enough to remain in one single reality. So you couldn't touch him, he couldn't eat, he couldn't pretty much feel anything that was human because he was basically disconnected literally from reality. He was on a different vibration or frequency than it was before. Well, remember what, if you ever saw the CW Flash, remember what they always said about vibrations and how each different Earth vibrated to a different frequency? That was basically Geiger. He was basically unstuck from any one frequency, and so he was everywhere in the universe and he was nowhere. It was almost like a ghost, but a ghost that was basically immortal. So I wonder if maybe Mr. Door is the same way. Like maybe he has to constantly travel between realities and he's not focused or anchored in one place, and he might need someone else's help to escape. Because even though he seems malevolent towards Alan, some of the things he says, he doesn't seem malicious. Like he doesn't seem like a cruel psychopath wanting to destroy everything, like how the Hiss wants you to destroy everything, or how Dylan was before Jesse purified him. Because if you look at Dylan in Control and how sadistic and torturous he is towards other people in the FBC, and then you look at the guy we met in the Lake House DLC, there's a huge difference between those two guys. One of them is almost like a psychopath, and the other one actually seems to want to help Jesse in the oldest house. He just doesn't know how. It's beyond his reach and he can't find his way back, but he actually does seem to want to help them. So clearly there's a huge difference between the two different guys. So I wonder if Mr. Door, maybe he's not malevolent in the sense of he wants to destroy everything, but he definitely has a goal that he's trying to pursue. The question is that what is his goal? And I wonder if we'll see that in another DLC for Alan Wake 2, or if we'll have to wait until 2027, I think they said, for Control 2 to actually be released. That's going to be a long wait. And I hope we're around for it, because the way things are going in the world, we'll probably be dead by then. Hopefully if the world does start to blow up, Remedy will just have mercy on us and just tell us the whole story before we all kick the bucket, so we can at least go to our fates knowing what happened to Jesse and the others. Because that would suck if we never get a resolution to this story, because the whole world literally gets blown to shit. But hopefully they'll have mercy on us. I trust Sam Lake to do the right thing. He seems like a decent, upstanding guy. But yeah, like, you see here, he's saying abducted aliens, doors, UFOs, polyhedrons. Well, we know what the Hedron part is. That's actually the Hedron from Control. The entity that was actually pretty much keeping humanity safe from the Hiss. And then once Once it went for a moment, like everything in the oldest house got shut down, and the hiss almost escaped into the real world, well, the outside world, which basically would have meant the end of humanity. Period. Until Jesse became the new focal point for that energy. So we know polyhedrons are real because we know Hedron was literally in the FPC. We know aliens are real because they have an actual real life alien. It's called Fra Marao, or Moro. I never know how to pronounce that name. Fra Mauru, but whatever he was a spaceman. So we know aliens are real also, UFOs. And we know Alan also used the concept of aliens in his Night Springs episode, North Star. I believe that was called North Star. Abducted, yeah. Obviously, we saw in the Time Breaker DLC that Mr. Door always abducts him and changes him into another universe. But the thing you have to remember about the DLC, and I'm sorry if I'm going on and on about this, but this stuff is fascinating. The thing you have to remember, this is the crucial rule for Alan Wake's lore. He cannot create anything from scratch. That's why all the people who believed he wrote Control and created the FPC and Jesse and Trench and Darling and all that stuff and the Hiss and then even the oldest house itself, which would be insane because Alan would literally be God in that case, and if he created the oldest house. It would be like Stephen King creating the Dark Tower. It would literally mean that Stephen King is actually God, which is obviously not the case. God is not a elderly writer who's recovering from his earlier drug addiction in the 70s and 80s. So Alan Wake is not God. He cannot create people or objects or monsters from scratch. What he can do is manipulate things that already exist into being, and move them around in certain ways like pieces on a chessboard. So the Hiss already existed. When he said if there was one, why not more about the dark presence, what he meant was he was picking up, due to his natural psychic abilities, he was picking up on the presence of the Hiss. He saw it in a dream that was foretelling the future. And because he saw it, by the time he went to write it down on paper, he had already forgotten half the details of what he saw. As happens to everyone when you're in a dream, you as soon as you wake up, you instantly start forgetting everything that happened in that dream, everything that went down. So he got half of it right, and he made it into a Night Springs episode, and then he later tried to refine it. But the thing you have to remember, he did not create any of that from scratch. Jesse and Trench and Darling and Hedron and Dylan and the Hiss, all that stuff was already existing in the universe. What Alan Wake did was simply rearrange it in a different way that would benefit him. He thought that if Jesse fought off the Hiss once they invaded and became ultra strong, she became so powerful that she could fight them off single-handedly, that she would be able to come in here and rescue him with the FPC. The only problem is he did not account for something going horribly wrong, and that was them getting trapped in the oldest house building, Because that's not really a building. That's basically like the anchor of reality is what we're getting at. That's basically the world tree. Yggdrasil, the stuff they're always talking about in 4 comics and 4 movies and Norse mythology. The oldest house is basically Yggdrasil. It's the tree of the world. So it connects Earth to all the other realities in existence, or at least the known universe. But the problem is they're effectively locked in there now. They can't get out. And I believe part of it is probably due to cleaning up what was left of the Hiss, but the other part of it, and we see this later on in Alan Wake 2, is that Ati is missing. Ati is the caretaker of the oldest house. Without him, you don't know what the threats are. You don't know where the openings are. You don't know what you can open, what you can close, where all the shortcuts are. So basically, without Ati in there, they have no way to get out. So Jesse can't come and rescue Alan like he planned, because it's he basically got her stuck in there almost against her will. Be right back in a moment. Let me charge up the laptop. I'm getting a low battery notice, so be right back in a couple. Alright, I'm back. Told you that wouldn't take too long. But yeah, so basically Alan has made a huge mess of pretty much reality at this point. He's basically trapped his only possible savior inside the oldest house, which is basically why he needs Saga. He needs Saga to help him get out of there because his plan with Jessie failed. Jessie could have rescued him. She was powerful enough, and she had a good support team in Emily and the others. Had she not gotten stuck in the oldest house, but unfortunately for him, it's been 4 years and she can't get out. None of them can get out. So even someone like Emily, who might be able to come up with some half magical, half scientific research to get him out of there, is basically trapped there. And we know that people in the Lake House facility don't give a crap about that. They want to exploit the power he has to rewrite reality. Which is scary as fuck, considering those two people literally sounded like Nazis. Like, that's, you did not want them Armands writing the fabric of the world. That would be disastrous for everyone. So Alan needed to turn to Saga. And the reason Jessie is stuck in there in the oldest house, I'm thinking, is probably because Alan has unintentionally gotten Audie trapped in Bright Falls and Watery. He can't get out. And he's the only guy who has the keys to the oldest house, who basically means he's the only guy that has the keys to reality itself. And the only one that might be able to actually go in here and get his ass out. You can see Audie shows up in the dark place from time to time, but I missed a very crucial cutscene earlier on during my first playthrough where you see that he's actually disoriented and seems to be suffering from senile dementia in Rose's retirement home, where she takes care of the elderly folk. So basically, that's a very bad situation, not just for Alan, but for the world at large, because you basically have an old ancient god who's supposed to be taking care of the center of reality, keeping everything together, stopping other forces from getting in here and wrecking everything up. And now, thanks to Alan Wake's writing, probably when he was Mr. Scratch, Audie is basically now trapped in Bright Falls and Watery and unable to get out of that area. And he doesn't even fully remember who he is. So that's I don't know if that was an intentional side effect of the Dark Presence controlling Alan, or if that was just a happy coincidence, but I'm sure that's probably drilled. The Dark Presence is probably drilled with that because his one greatest adversary is literally unable to do anything to fight back. Because Alan is just a man. Yeah, he has a lot of powers, but ultimately he's just a man. Audie is basically a god. Audie could probably find some way to shut it down before it got too bad, but Audie is now trapped in Bright Falls and unable to return to the oldest house where he belongs. And now I'm also wondering, does Audie grow weaker the longer he's trapped in here? Like, do you run the risk of him becoming possibly a mortal man again and maybe even dying here if he doesn't get back to the oldest house? Like, how closely are they linked? Can Audie function independently of it for several years, or is he permanently locked into it? Because we know the board can't leave. The board apparently were starving for energy before they ever got to the oldest house. They hooked themselves in there using the nail and control. If you play that game or see any playthroughs of the DLC, you know what I'm talking about. They basically hooked themselves into the oldest house and they can't get out. So they say it's their house, but they also say it's a prison because they feed off the energy in the oldest house, but they can't leave or else they'll starve to death. I'm guessing their other source of energy is gone. Or maybe they can't use it anymore because they blame the former. You encountered the former, which is one of their former members in that game, and they basically exile him for something that happened. I wonder if what happened was that he actually accidentally screwed up their other source of power or food, and now they have to rely on the oldest house. But either way, we know they can't leave. If they leave, they'll starve. And I'm kind of wondering if the longer Audie stays in the human world, you know, he just went there for a vacation. He was probably expecting to be there just for like 2 or 3 weeks and then go back to the oldest house. I wonder if the longer he stays in our world, the weaker he grows, until he might actually just turn into a mortal man and actually die, which would probably be catastrophic for that Earth. Because Jessie sure as hell can't handle everything on her own, so... yeah, very fascinating lore that Alan Wake has created. Sorry, very fascinating lore that Remedy has created with this stuff, and quite a potentially world-ending situation that Alan Wake has created through his incompetence, because he just wanted to get out of here, and in trying to get out, he's basically almost pitted the forces of the universe against each other, and now all they've done is just created one huge gigantic mess that needs to be cleaned up. So to recap, to summarize everything that he's accomplished so far, Jesse, his potential savior, is stuck in the oldest house. We don't yet know what happens to Saga. We'll find out by the end of this what happens to her, whether she escapes or not, but right now she's stuck in the dark place. The old gods of Asgard are also stuck in the dark place. The dark place took over the lake house facility thanks to their efforts. The one god protecting the oldest house is currently stuck in a backwater town in the Midwest US and may actually be starving to death of energy himself. He may not have enough energy outside the oldest house left to survive for long, so he may be dying. And then on top of that, this is another thing, you've now granted the board complete authority basically over the oldest house because they have no Adi to oppose them. And on top of that, you have Mr. Door with his agenda. And you also have the Hiss, who are still on the Earth. They're just inside the FBC building, but they're still there. So basically, Alan Wake, in trying to escape, has created probably the ultimate apocalyptic scenario, because he's basically got many threats lined up against Earth and the Remedyverse, with no one basically left to stop them. So good job, Alan. Very meticulous planning there. You left us infested with demons and monsters, and the only possible defense is basically laying there dying in a retirement home. Great job there, buddy. Very well done. Let's give a clap to Mr. Wake for his exquisite writing and plotting that left Earth pretty much on the brink of destruction. Well going, Alan. Great job. Alright, let's move on from this. Sorry, but it had to be said. It had to be said. Alan Wake is a colossal, monumental fuck-up of a writer. Let's just say it and leave it at that. Alright, so I was going to stop the previous video there, but as you can see, I went a bit further in the tunnel because I actually wanted to point this out quickly. This won't take more than a couple seconds, trust me, but you see the Ocean View Hotel? You remember how the Ocean View Motel is just a series of doorways where Jessie can get through? She can only enter one, but you notice there's a series of doors that are locked in a motel, and you have this weird otherworldly corridor. Well, I was watching Lost Highway couple weeks ago, the David Lynch movie, classic David Lynch movie, and what do you think I saw in that movie? I actually saw a motel in the desert with lots of different doors. Actually, it was a house in the desert, but It was this house in the desert with lots of different doors, most of which couldn't be opened, and in one of them, the main protagonist found something weird that was almost otherworldly. So we can definitely guess where Sam Lake and Remedy got the inspiration for the Ocean View Motel. It wasn't just Twin Peaks, although obviously that's a huge influence, but it was also probably Lost Highway, and I hadn't even considered that because I knew Lost Highway had influenced Silent Hill 2. People claim that, and it's true, with its themes of forgetting who you are and taking on different identities and dead wives that continue to be a mystery plaguing you. So there was obviously a lot of a Lost Highway influence on Silent Hill 2, but I didn't realize they also influenced the Remedyverse. Probably I'll have to look it up because he said apparently Sam Lake put up a list of books that influenced his creation in these games. But in terms of movies, it does seem like Lost Highway, even if it's just that one scene, actually influenced the Ocean View Motel, because that literally is what at one point the main character by Bill Pullman goes into a house, and after accidentally killing someone, he goes upstairs when he's all distraught while he's waiting for his the other woman downstairs to prepare for not even their getaway, more like their trip away from there. But he at one point he goes upstairs and all he sees is just that weird otherworldly corridor full of doors that he can't open, and he opens one up one door, and then something distinctly otherworldly happens inside that room. So that's more than a definite coincidence. That has to be a hint that scene in particular influenced the creation of the Ocean View Motel. Maybe not the hotel, but definitely the Ocean View Motel and Control. And I did not even know that because for years and years and years I tried to find the time to sit down and watch Lost Highway one day, and I never got to it until like 2 weeks ago. So now that I've seen it, I can safely say that one scene definitely influenced the Ocean View Motel at least. So Sam Lake is definitely drawing inspiration from everywhere. You know, David Lynch, Stephen King, Silent Hill. There's nothing he won't appropriate and put to better creative use. So very nice reference there. It actually explains a bit more about the Ocean View Motel in that game. So I thought it was a cool little detail I shared. Definitely check out Lost Highway soon. So this is probably going to be the last video. The one after this will probably be the last clip that I add to the segment, because I wanted to make it all one big playthrough, or not playthrough, but one big analysis video of the final draft. But it's obvious that the game is way too long for that, so I'm going to do it in parts. I'll probably just do 2 or 3 parts of the final draft, just explaining and theorizing about stuff as we go along, especially the new stuff that we find. So yeah, the next video after this, the next clip that I add to will probably be the finale of part 1 for the final draft, especially since we're actually near the end of this chapter. We're gonna move on to chapter 3 soon, so or chapter 4, one of those. But we're gonna move on to the next section of Alan's little journey here, so this will probably come to a wrap pretty soon.
It is fading like a dream. I must hold on to it. I remember an awful beacon in the darkness, the scene of a ritualistic murder site in the subway tunnels. Is it a previous draft of my writing? Must be. I've been trying to shape the dark place around me, but so much fades away. Even my memory of the process, washed away by dark waves. But some things remain. The darkest, nastiest elements, like the murder site. It's my goal, a stepping stone to travel deeper to escape. Write a narrative that takes me there. Casey will lead me to it.
scene here had changed.
Witnessed something here that made him run scared. Whether the summoning ritual had been a bona fide supernatural event or the mass psychosis of stark raving lunatics, it didn't change the facts. The cult was messing with things no one should mess with.
The ritual was a vital part of the story, the key to reaching the murder site. The new story beat fit the story perfectly. This was dark, but the story had to be dark.
Your friend still needs him when
the only ones using the tunnels. Hidden graffiti signs marked secret routes. I kept hearing whispers around burn barrels of an underground society of mystic outsiders with hidden knowledge. Typical New York.
Wait. Wait. I'm lost in the dark. Alan, awake. This is just time.
couldn't hear the dark presence. It was gone. The tunnel was open now. I could get through. The plot element I found would drive the story forward. The tunnel was open now. I could get through. Dark presence. I had seen it before. I remembered now. It was always out there, hunting me. Somehow the victim's heart was the key. Something had shifted. I felt an overwhelming closeness to home. An FBI agent? Who are you?
What is this? Who are you?
She can hear me.
I'm Saga Anderson, FBI.
This is Alan Wake. I'm trapped here. The dark place. Under Cauldron Lake.
Cauldron Lake. Who are you?
I'm trying to escape. I'm making progress, but I'm in danger. The dark presence. Help me. Please, help me. I could sense it. I was closer to home. Had the woman in the vision helped me somehow? Something had changed. Outside. Parliament Tower. Where I'd lived with Alice. It was out there. Waiting for me.
Alright, so that is the end of part 1 of the final draft. Not really a playthrough, more like an analysis or examining the new stuff we come across. So I know I said this before, but I'll say it again. What does this remind you of? The oldest house, right? That whole black void where the former escaped to, where it's just the endless pillars over and over again. That's exactly what this reminds you of, doesn't it? It is literally like the oldest house down here. So yeah, that's the end of that chapter for Alan. I believe we've got one other for Alan before we return over to Saga and start her local girl chapter. But we're gonna do that next time, at some other point in time. Maybe a few days from now, once we play a bit more. I gotta get back to Astrobot because they updated it with new bots, and I also want to record more Silent Hill. Either free or I'm trying to get one set up. I gotta figure out how to record that, but yeah, so far it's intriguing. It's not really a new game plus in the traditional sense. You do get to keep all your weapons, some of your old items. I don't think we kept all of them, because Alan's missing an awful lot of stuff like bandages and medicine and stuff like that to help him out. But you do get to keep most of your old gear. But the real difference is in the changes they've made. Like that last recording I recorded with the TV, I don't remember that being the same there. I wonder if they've all changed as far as most of the TV recordings that you encounter throughout the game. Maybe they've all changed to allude to the fact that he is caught in a loop. He even said himself that the murder sites and the cold investigation were remnants basically left over from a previous attempt at a story. So like, he's already forgotten that he's in a loop, but you keep seeing the signs over and over again on the TV. So I wonder if they've all changed more or less. I guess we'll find out as we go further through the game. What else? Yeah, besides the TVs, like I said, I'm also wondering when certain characters might show up. I get the feeling the old gods of Asgard might show up near the end. I still don't know about Dr. Darling. I don't know where he is, but we gotta see him at some point, because it can't just be that he popped in to just give that one transmission and then pop out. So he has to have a further presence in the game. I just don't know where or when it's gonna come. But yeah, I envision I'll probably do maybe 2 or 3 of these videos, which is, like I said, not really a playthrough because I'm not showing every single gameplay segment. You'll notice I went quiet there for like the last 15 to 20 minutes. That's because I wanted to let the finale run out to appreciate the actual gameplay in the game, you know, not just me talking, but the actual fighting the shadow enemies and stuff like that. Plus, we got some really good scenes with the dark presence there too, when Alan's running away from it. So I wanted to let that play out, and also the finding the cult's altar in the collapsed subway tunnel. I wanted to show that scene off too. But after this, we're gonna switch over to Saga. So I'm wondering what she's gonna encounter that's different, because Alan so far has found a ton of stuff that's actually quite different from the regular game. So I wonder what stuff Saga's gonna find on as she goes on with her investigation. But yeah, that's it for now. Overall, I'm enjoying it. Like I said, it's a very unique type of new game plus, because usually they either let you keep all your old equipment or else give you a brand new ending like Resident Evil 2. That's what it does with New Game Plus. It's basically the same game plus the added Birkin boss at the end. Is it G5? The one where he turns to like this giant blob of mutated mass. But basically, yeah, you just get one new ending and then you get one extra boss. Or in other New Game Plus styles, you basically get all your old equipment back, but it's still the same game with still the same ending. This one's kind of doing a blend of both. You're getting both your old equipment back, all your guns, all your bullets, all the stuff you had left in terms of supplies, and you're also getting a brand new ending. Plus, there's also little changes here and there scattered throughout the whole game, which let you know and let Alan know that he's in a loop. And this one might actually be the final one. So I'm looking forward to seeing where all this is going. But that's it for now. Thank you for watching. I hope this doesn't prove too boring for you, just watching the analysis and hearing my thoughts and theories about the game. That's mainly why I'm doing this, because we've already beaten the game fully once and we played through every single segment. Now I just want to theorize on what's going to happen, what's going on with the larger Remedyverse, and what their plans for the next 2 or 3 games might be, especially with Firebreak coming out probably pretty soon, the multiplayer game. I don't know if I'll play that one. I'm not big at all on multiplayer games, especially online multiplayer games, but I guess if there is a sufficient enough story, I could give it a try, just to see how the whole his situation resolves itself. But like I said, we'll get to all that stuff later in due time. So thank you for watching, and I hope to see you again next time on Alan Wake 2, the final draft, with live play-by-play and analysis on all the weird stuff that's going on. So see you later, everyone. Take care.